Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is episode 382 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me, whether you're listening here on YouTube or on all the different audio podcast platforms that you can find the show. Today, we are joined by Tennessee Titans analyst ahead of the Jets-Titans showdown on Sunday afternoon, Mike Herndon. Mike, thanks so much for coming on. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
Yep, looking forward to getting into this. So both teams coming into this matchup 0-1, sort of two different losses. Tennessee obviously blowing the lead late in the game. The New York Jets, despite taking an early 7-3 lead, defense didn't look good. They end up getting blown out, lose by 13 to the San Francisco 49ers without Christian McCaffrey. So I just wanted to start here. What was your thoughts, of course, on the Titans' disappointing loss on the road where they blow the lead against the Bears? And then from an outside perspective, what you saw in that Jets game against the Niners?
Yeah, I mean, from a Titan standpoint, that was one of the worst second half collapses in franchise history. I think it was like fifth or sixth, maybe, in the biggest blown leads in the 64 years this franchise has been around. So obviously, pretty crushingly disappointing, especially since Caleb Williams did nothing in that game. I mean, he was dreadful. The Titans defense had him, locked up the entire game. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. They had one field goal, I think, and then they had the blocked punt. They had or I guess they had a couple field goals, but they had a blocked punt return for a touchdown, and then of course the dreadful Levis interception return for a touchdown, which really basically ended the game at that point because Titans were up 17-16, and it's third down. He's trying to avoid a sack and just kind of side slings it towards the sidelines, and it's picked off and taken back. One of the worst football plays you'll ever see in the NFL. Obviously a pretty crazy game for week one. Some good things to take out of it, but a lot of bad too, obviously, for the Titans. And then watching the Jets, I was surprised by the defense. I thought the defense was going to be better. Full disclosure, I picked the Jets to win the AFC East. I'm not backing off of that based off of 1 week against the defending NFC champs, but was surprised that the defense didn't look better. I kind of thought that the offense might take a little bit of time to get going with Rodgers coming off of injury and everything like that, and a lot of new pieces there as well. But the defense was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, totally agree. The run defense getting dominated was definitely not something I think I expected. Obviously, anybody really else expected, especially after what this team has done the last 2 seasons. Now, you mentioned Will Levis. We'll start with him. Of course, coming into year 2, showed some good things last year. How concerned are you with this performance? Do you feel he can bounce back, build off of it in terms of, getting rid of obviously the negative, the two interceptions, the killer one late, as you talked about, which was just very questionable throw. Are you at all concerned about him? His confidence moving forward? What are your expectations going forward for Levis?
Yeah, I think certainly concerned. I think from a confidence standpoint, he's a pretty confident guy. And he said all the right things this week as far as his confidence level and the team's buy-in with him and everything like that. I know he takes that kind of thing very seriously. And I think mentally he'll be okay. But as far as confidence in him from the outside of the building, I think it's at maybe an all-time low coming off of this game, just because he wasn't that good before that dreadful pick. Like, he was pretty bad, frankly, before that bad pick. But then to make that decision after they'd spend the entire offseason, that's all they've talked about is improving decision making, knowing when to take what's given to you instead of trying to make the hero play. And even on that, he was just trying to get the ball out of bounds so that they would avoid the sack. The net gain on that is so small relative to the risk that it was just a horrific decision. And I think that was a concern of a lot of people, including myself. I was not a big Will Levis guy coming out of the draft. I think he surprised me last year. He played better than I thought he would. And I had some pretty high hopes for him heading into this year, but this did throw cold water on a lot of that, because it was a horrific decision, and it felt like a guy who was not really getting things clicking all game. The run game kind of carried them in the first half, And then it felt like as the game wore on, he was just pressing more and more. And you could almost feel him getting tighter and more anxious to make a play. And it just reeked of desperation. And it makes you worry about his decision making in pressure situations, moving forward. So it's certainly something to watch. I think many Titans fans, and analysts, including myself, are pretty concerned. I mean, that was a concerning performance to open year 2 with. Now, it's week 1 can be a liar. We know that. But we will see what this looks like. And he needs a bounce-back performance at home against the Jets, frankly.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, one of the positives for Tennessee last week, I thought, was the run game. And I think it's a big emphasis going into this one, especially from the Jets, who, of course, struggled against the run. Jordan Mason goes out there, looks like Christian McCaffrey, which was just not expected from anybody. They let up 180 yards total. The Titans last week, 140 yards in the ground. Just what was your thoughts, of course, the new acquisition in Tony Pollard, his debut, and even Tajay Spears, that kind of duo coming together, but specifically Pollard, who looked good, the 82 yards, and, of course, the score.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that we saw as big of a difference between the Pollard usage and the Spears usage in this game. I think we pretty much all expected it to be more of a 1A, 1B, and I do think that's what they're going to get back to. Even Brian Callahan said this week that he regretted not getting Spears more involved in that game. They very much view them as interchangeable backs. I mean, both guys can catch the ball out of the backfield. That is a part of their skill set. Both guys are, roughly the same size. They're pretty elusive. They're good at breaking tackles. Pollard, I think, is going to be the 1A of the split, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as drastic as what we saw this week. And Pollard looked good. I mean, he has bounced back, I think, from what was a relatively rough season for him compared to early in his career last year in Dallas. He was working his way back from injury for a lot of that season, and I think he only started to feel right kind of down the stretch. And the Titans have seen a lot of good from him, both in the preseason and camp, all of that. I think they really like him, and he's played really well. He was really good in this game. The offensive line run blocks better than they pass block right now by a good bit. So I think, J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, they're going to lean on that side. And those are powerful offensive linemen. They can move bodies. And I think that's going to be where they want to hit you, is running left behind those big guys on the left side of the line there.
You mentioned J.C. Latham, of course, a guy, coming out of college. It was a guy that the Jets looked at. Of course, they go ahead and take fashion. You guys take Latham. A couple offensive tackles in this draft that were definitely high on the board. What was your impressions on Latham in his rookie debut?
The run blocking was what I expected it to be. He is able to move people and maul people. He creates a lot of displacement in the run game. Really, really good showing from him in that phase. A lot of their biggest runs in this game came off of that left side right between him and Skoronski. Pass protection was bad. It was just flat out bad. And that's kind of been his profile in the draft, that he was going to be more of a run blocker. He did make the switch to the left side, coming from the right side at Alabama. And he's been, kind of penciled in as the left tackle from the jump here. So he's making that transition. I don't think, he's necessarily going to struggle this much moving forward, but I mean, he made Darrell Taylor look like Lawrence Taylor in this first game. I mean, it was rough. So I think that bears watching, certainly against a Jets edge group that can get after the passer. Especially with Jermaine Johnson, I think is going to be a real test for him. He's a better player than DeMarcus Walker and Darrell Taylor. So it's going to be a step up for Latham, and he needs to perform better. He gave up 5 pressures and a strip sack in this game. And it wasn't good enough from a pass protection standpoint. And it wasn't good enough from Skoronski either. He gave up five pressures too, and that was disappointing for a guy who most Titans fans were looking to break out in year 2 as kind of a higher end guard. Again, run blocking was good, but pass protection was weak from both those guys, and that's a major problem for them.
Yeah, definitely development to look for here on Sunday afternoon. Now, just one quick thing I want to finish up here on offense before we head on over to the defensive side of the football, and then a couple other notes here before we close things out. Your thoughts on Calvin Ridley, his debut with Tennessee, and how good do you think he can be this year? Of course, a matchup I think we'll be looking forward to. Not that Sauce travels, but the times that Sauce is on Ridley, of course, the number one CB versus, of course, your number one receiver.
Yeah, Ridley. It was an up and down debut. I felt like he made a few plays. Levis didn't do him a lot of favors though. There was a couple times where Ridley was a couple steps clear of the defense, and Levis just missed him down the field for what would have been long touchdowns. Ridley's speed is, the Titans haven't exactly had a ton of speedy wide receivers over the last few years, so this may just be a Titans thing, but his speed is different. It is eye-popping. It jumps off the tape. He just flat out ran by guys, including Jalen Johnson a couple times last week. He accelerates and gets to top speed in a hurry. I think the timing with Levis is not quite there yet, and there was a play where Levis and the coaching staff both agreed that should have been a back shoulder ball that Ridley just did not adjust to it, and he just ran the go, didn't turn around, and the ball sailed out of bounds. So there's still some timing stuff. There's still some like coordination, communication things going on with Ridley and Levis that's just not quite clicking yet. And I think once they do click, he could have a big year. Because the talent is quite obvious. I mean, he's really good at creating separation, which is something that they've never had here in a very long time. So I do think Hopkins is going to play more this week. By the way, I know Hopkins and Mike Williams kind of in the same boat. A little bit of toe in the water that first week, and then sounds like they're going to be ramped up this week. So Hopkins was kind of Levis's security blanket last week, so having him back could be helpful for this Titans passing game.
Yeah, 100%. Seems like those two guys kind of going along the same time frame there coming off the injuries. Now, I want to move over to the defense side of the football. A guy that I think caught a lot of people's eyes was DAndre Swift, of course, out of Texas. Got after Caleb Williams, was a big threat there in the interior. Just what did you see out of him, and how excited are you to see a guy like that continue? Of course, a very really good piece coming out of college, and a guy that I think performed really well in his debut.
Yeah, I think everyone's pretty excited about him. Of course, I am, just a full disclosure, I am a Longhorns alumni. I am a Texas fan, so I try to remain as impartial in my analysis as possible. Yeah. But DAndre Swift, certainly a guy that was like kind of a controversial draft pick for the Titans. A lot of people thought 38 was way too high for him. They thought he was going to slide with the character, maturity concerns, things like that were kind of reported around him in the pre-draft process. But he has been nothing but, a model citizen since arriving in Nashville. His weight is down. His conditioning is up. He is playing the way that they envisioned him playing when they drafted him with that spot. And he was excellent against the Bears. In fact, he was better than Jeffrey Simmons, which I would have never guessed for very first week of the season. He is extremely powerful. Yes, you see the size, the strength, all that stuff, but he is quick. He has got quick feet for a man of that size, and he more importantly has quick hands. He is really good kind of getting these little like chop club kind of moves against the centers and guards in a phone booth. He's able to kind of quickly maneuver past, or at least get on an edge. And then once he's on an edge, he's so strong that you're just not going to push him off of his path. So very, very encouraging debut for him. Played a lot of snaps too. Him and Simmons are the strength of the defense. That in the middle, it's going to be very hard to run the ball in there. And they are going to get pushed in the passing game right in the quarterback's lap. And I think that's the design and the idea of what the Titans wanted when they took him, was that they are going to have one of the best duos in the interior in the entire NFL. And through week one, just week one, but so far, so good there.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I want to take a look, too, at some of the secondary pieces. Of course, you brought in Quandre Diggs, and Jets fans, it looks like we'll see former Jet Jamal Adams out there in his Titans debut. Looks like he'll be ready to roll coming off the injury. So you get Diggs, you have Jamal Adams. What are your thoughts on the secondary and thoughts on, Diggs' debut? And I guess what type of roles should fans expect to see Jamal Adams in this week?
Yeah, so the secondary is completely kind of revamped. So obviously they made the move with Diggs kind of late in camp to bring him in. They needed another safety in there with Amani Hooker, because they brought Jamal Adams in the week before, but I don't think anyone really views Jamal Adams as a full-time starter, right? Like, he's going to be targeted. I think he's going to be more of like a dime linebacker for them in a lot of cases. Use him around the line of scrimmage, use him to blitz, that kind of thing. I think he's going to be a targeted weapon for the defense, not a full-time player. Like, yeah, it'd be surprised me if he got more than 50% of the snaps in this game. I think he's going to be like a 20 to 30% kind of bit role player, but maybe he could have an impact on some plays doing what he does best around the line of scrimmage. The other piece of the secondary they brought in, obviously, L'Jarius Sneed with the big trade. I thought he looked really good in week one. His speed, his physicality is pretty clear. Upgrade over what they've had here in recent seasons. And then Chidobe Awuzie was also an offseason acquisition. They spent a good bit of money on him in free agency at the other corner spot. And then they've got a third-year rising player in Roger McCreary, who was a 35th overall pick, I believe, in 2022. It's a really good cornerback room. It's not as good as the Jets, I don't think, because you don't have the quite the top end talent like Sauce, and of course Reed's a stud as well, and Carter too. I mean, they're all good over there. So I think it's not far behind though. Like if you're ranking the top cornerback groups in the league, I think Jets are up there. I think Browns are up there, but you're not going to go probably past 5 without getting to the Titans right now, the way that these guys play. And they played that way in week one. They were all over these receivers from the Bears. Very talented group, obviously, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze. It's a very good group, and they stifled them. And the Bears had nothing going all day. So it'll be very interesting to see how they handle Garrett Wilson, who I think is better than all those Bears receivers. And obviously Rodgers is a different animal altogether from a rookie quarterback making his first start. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this week. But again, so far so good with the secondary revamp here in Tennessee.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up DJ Moore, because if you're a DJ Moore fantasy holder like I am, it was not a very good week one. So they definitely did their job in containing Chicago's kind of three-headed monster, of course, with the 2 vets and the rookie there in Odunze. Now, I just kind of wanted to wrap things up here, get into a couple different topics. Number one, what do you feel are some X factors and some underrated players for Tennessee coming into this one, guys to look out for both on offense and defense?
I'll start on defense and say, the guy that I'm really interested to watch this week, Adams for sure, just to see how they actually deploy him and use him. But Ernest Jones, another guy that they traded for right at the end of camp, very much a fit for this Denard Wilson defense, which is it wants to blitz its off-ball linebackers, bring a lot of kind of exotic pressure looks on third downs. I think Ernest Jones, he split time with Jack Gibbons in that first game. I think you're going to see him ramped up and kind of be the primary linebacker next to Kenneth Murray in this game. But both Murray and Jones, extremely athletic linebackers, better going downhill than they are going backwards. But those guys are going to be brought as pressure players, and I'm interested to see how Jones is able to kind of unlock, maybe some pressure packages for them in week 2 here. Flipping over to offense, I think it comes down to Levis at the end of the day. It's the obvious answer, but sometimes that's the right answer, right? He's got to get it back on track. And then the pass protection has to be better too, right? I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. But I think this game on offense comes down to whether they can protect him well enough and whether he can bounce back and play within himself, play within the offense, as they've talked about all offseason. I think Brian Callahan made very little secret of the fact that he was pretty disappointed in Will Levis in week 1. It is very much disappointed dad energy during his press conferences this week. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles all that. It's been a different week, playing at home. Does that make a difference for them? But they're going to be playing against a better defense too. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup for them to have a big bounce back game, but that's what they need if they're going to get on track on offense.
Yeah, I'm curious. How have you viewed so far? And we'll close things up here, but I guess how your early impressions so far, moving on from the Vrabel era to Callahan, what have you liked about him? And I guess what is your confidence in him too, moving forward?
I mean, it's kind of, I was a Vrabel fan. I thought Vrabel was a good coach. Yes, he's a bit of a Neanderthal. He's a bit of an old school guy. Like, he wants to run the football and play defense and, be situationally great, all those things, which I do think are valuable. I think more of where football is going is where Brian Callahan's going, with more of a focus on offense, more of a focus on the passing game, stopping the pass, all of that. You're not building your offense around a 250-pound running back anymore. As good as that 250-pound running back was, it's a very different approach, and I tend to prefer more of the modern approach. I think to win in this league, you have got to have a good passing game. There's just no two ways around it. You're not going to run the football to an NFL championship when you've got Patrick Mahomes and all these other guys running the sport right now. You've got to be able to throw to keep up. And I think, whether Will Levis can do that or not, we don't know, but I think they're at least moving the offense in the right direction. And whether Callahan can be better than Vrabel, I don't know, but I do think his philosophy is more in line with where football is now than what Mike Vrabel's was.
Yeah, especially from a Jets perspective, where we've seen the Jets try and traffic cones at quarterback essentially the last 2-3 seasons. So it's definitely a passing league, and it's hopefully we'll see Rodgers back out there this week, come away healthy, and hopefully a good performance there for him from a Jets perspective. Now, from a score prediction here, who do you think comes away on top in this game?
I think the Jets are going to win this game. I think they're just the better team. They're the more talented team. Score prediction, I think it's going to be pretty low scoring overall. I'd say maybe like something 20-10 Jets is going to be my guess, somewhere in there.
We will see how it all plays out. 2 0-1 teams looking for an early victory for the Jets. Quick turnaround after this as well to the home opener. Feels like, from a Jets perspective, this is very close to an early season must win. Falling to 0-2 with Aaron Rodgers and the talent on this team would be a pretty dreadful start, to say the least, especially if we don't see improvement from the defense. Now, to close things out, just wanted to, again, thank you for coming on. And where can everybody find all your Titans analysis and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days, at Mike Herndon NFL. And then my written work is all at paulkuharski.com. It's mostly a Titan site, but there's some good NFL stuff in there as well. And then I've also got podcast, Football and Other F Words, which is on the 104.5 The Zone feed here in Nashville. So if you want to check out that. We did an episode last night that had some good preview of this game. A lot of talk about Will Levis. So if you're interested in Will Levis, we got you covered there.
Yeah, definitely go check him out. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come on here and talk all things Jets Titans. Looking forward to the matchup, and we will see who gets to the 500 mark this weekend. Stay tuned for a lot more content coming your way. Until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.